Texas Governor Greg Abbott not letting State House Democrats get away with breaking quorum after more than 50 of them fled the state to avoid a vote on the newly drawn state district map. He's now ordering law enforcement to arrest the lawmakers and is threatening to vacate their seats. I want to bring in Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. She's a member of the House Ways and Means and Small Business Committees and chairs the Budget and Spending Task Force of the Republican Study Committee. Congresswoman, so I guess the big question here, what is going on in the Lone Star State? There's quite a lot. It's been a busy 48 hours. What do you make of the fact, look, these Democrats are going to have to come home. They're going to get sick of hotels. What happens next when they finally do come back to Texas?
Great to see you, Cheryl. It's a great question. I mean, well, yes, the Democrats should come home. The Democrats should never have left in the first place. I mean, they swore an oath when they took office that they're going to represent their districts, and by leaving, not even showing up to vote, not even showing up to give their constituents a voice, they're obviously breaking the law. And I'm very proud of our governor for actually stepping up. The other question you have to ask is, you talk about the hotel rooms, paying for those. Who's paying for their travel? Who's paying for their fines? If they're taking dollars improperly, it could be constituted as bribery. So, I mean, that's something else that they've got to get down to that I don't know a whole lot of people are talking about. But where are they fleeing? They're fleeing to these blue states that, one, in many instances were overcounted in the census, so probably should have lost congressional district seats anyway. And two, they're fleeing to these sanctuary areas that have been protecting illegal immigrants who've been coming over. And they're relying on those illegal immigrants to populate their congressional districts. So Texas is doing it right. We were undercounted in the census. This gives us an opportunity to right that wrong. But look, it is fully within our Supreme Court, has deemed that it's fully within the state of Texas to redistrict. It belongs within the states, and this is something that they're choosing to do. The rest of the states should support it, as they have all done. You mentioned it earlier, Massachusetts, 35% of their vote, the statewide vote, is Republican, and yet they've got zero representation in Congress in Massachusetts alone. California, 9 out of 52 are Republicans, and yet they've got 40% of the statewide vote. So this has been going on for years. Texas is stepping up, and I'm proud of it.
Well, and New York and California have done the same thing. And, it's the pot calling the kettle black this morning. I want you to listen to
Illinois.
Exactly. I want you to listen to this is actually New York Governor Kathy Hochul, and this is also Governor Gavin Newsom. Here's their reaction to all of this. Watch.
I have news flash for Republicans in Texas. This is no longer the Wild West. We're not going to tolerate our democracy being stolen, and if Republicans are willing to rewrite these rules to give themselves an advantage, then they're leaving us no choice. We must do the same.
They've triggered this response, and we're not going to roll over, and we're going to fight fire with fire. Whatever they are doing will be neutered here in the state of California, and they will pay that price.
Congresswoman, your reaction to this rhetoric that we're hearing from the other side.
Well, I love the New York governor calling us the wild, wild west. Maybe she should look at what's happening to the businesses that are fleeing from her city and in her state and coming to places like Texas. And the same thing with California. Look, they're talking about righting a wrong. The fact is that they wrote the rules. They have been doing this for years. We've already looked at the percentage of statewide Republicans that are obviously not represented in Congress. They need to step up. They need to recognize the fact that this is absolutely legal. And in the state of California, it's not. In order for Governor Newsom to be able to do this, he's going to have to actually go to his voters. So I think he's completely speaking at a step way over his skis. They may not want to have redistricting. They may recognize the fact that 40% of their votes are Republican, and yet they've got barely 17% representation in Congress. So I think they have written the rules, and they're just upset because Republicans are now playing by them.
What do you make of Kevin Kiley's move in this measure that maybe we should make it law that it's only every 10 years that we do redistricting? That's always been, because you had the census every 10 years, that's normally the way that this has worked. That's just tradition. But now it's mid-decade. Is that something that you would support?
I think it's something I would consider. The problem is that you even had the Census Bureau that admitted that the numbers were absolutely wrong, that they undercounted in states like Texas and Florida, and they overcounted in states like California and in states in the Northeast. So let's make sure that our census data numbers are correct before we go ahead and make a blanket statement that we're only going to do it every 10 years.
Okay. Congresswoman, you also introduced the Stop Funders Act, and this includes rioting as a form of racketeering under the RICO Act. So you're doing this, of course, in response to both the anti-Semitic riots on college campuses and the violent protests that we've seen break out across American cities, which specifically targets law enforcement. Congresswoman, tell us more about this.
This bill would basically allow the racketeering charges to be forced against organized syndicates that we have, violent organized syndicates that are operating all across our country that are funding, that are organizing these violent riots that we see on campuses and in our cities that oftentimes are targeted against law enforcement. So it would give law enforcement an opportunity to have additional tools at their bequest to be able to use partnerships with local, state, and federal agencies working together, but also be able to take the opportunity where you've got sanctuary cities that are not protecting their citizens and refusing, in very many cases where you've got Soros-funded DAs, not to file charges, to be able to take it in the federal courts. And that's what needs to be happening, because we are going after the rioters, but a lot of these rioters aren't having charges pressed against them. We are seeing them show up in riots in city after city after city, and nobody's doing anything about it. But you got to find out who is funding it, who is organizing it to really get it to stop. And it has gotten to such a violent nature right now. You know, and on July 4th, we actually had one of our detention centers in North Texas that 14 of these terrorists opened fire on ICE agents. That's got to stop.
Well, actually, that leads to my next question for you, because the Republican Study Committee has launched a working group discussing about kind of the budget issues that we're coming into. I know there's been talk about, you know, the end of September and this possible government shutdown. But what about a second reconciliation package and what that could look like? I want to get your idea of what the status of that package is and what could be included in this, because, you know, we had Congressman Buddy Carter asked him the same thing. You know, look, I mean, if the CBO was saying that, you know, the big, beautiful bill is added into the debt and that's their new analysis, then what would you be willing to cut? Because when you come back from recess, you're going to have that, but then you're also going to have, you know, the potential of another government shutdown. How do you balance all this?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, and we have been working on reconciliation after the last 2.5 years as part of our tax bill. There was a lot of provisions that were removed in the Senate because of the Berger rule. We're going to be looking at a second reconciliation package to potentially put those back in. When you talk about cuts, we absolutely have to include more cuts. The Senate bill increased the cost. They made many of those provisions permanent, which was a good thing, but they did not take into account a lot of the cost for that. So I think we're going to be looking at further cuts, potentially looking at IRA type spending that was that could have been removed on the first reconciliation bill. But we've got a lot of work to do, and I would love to be able to get back to pre-COVID levels of spend. Even back then, I thought we were spending too much, but we've got to tackle the $37 billion. $37 trillion in debt that we've got. You know, working with this administration, they're also looking at rescission packages to be able to cut down on some of the waste, fraud, and abuse spending. I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to get that before the end of the year.
All right. Well, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, it's always great to speak with you. Thank you so much. We're going to keep watching the Lone Star State where you are this morning. Thank you, ma'am.